Hot Springs Village Inside Out is a closer look at the greatness of Hot Springs Village, Arkansas, and the surrounding areas. People, places, experiences. Hot Springs Village is one of the most beautiful places on earth. Join me, Randy Cantrell, and my co-host, Dennis Simpson, as we engage in weekly conversations to explore Hot Springs Village Inside Out. Today's show is brought to you by Central Arkansas's favorite radio station, KVRE. Find them on the dial at 92.9 FM. Stream them live at kvre.com. RE/MAX of Hot Springs Village, the award-winning RE/MAX of Hot Springs Village, is the largest real estate office inside the village with over 30 full-time agents and support staff. Visit them to learn more about this beautiful place to solve your real estate needs. Call them today at 1-800-364-9007 or find them online at explorehsv.com. They are RE/MAX of Hot Springs Village at 1-800-364-9007 or online at explorehsv.com.
Hot Springs Village Inside Out with another episode with Mr. Rick Marshall. Rick, you're still doing good. You're doing well today?
Doing great. Thank you, Dennis.
We're hoping we're not going to get blown away. We're having a change of weather here that could be significant. I tell you what, if it comes to the west end of the lake first, you let me know because I can see down there. But
All right.
I
got an eye on it.
Got an eye on it. Let's talk about lakes because I had a lady this morning text me. And she is asking me about short-term rentals on the lakes. And she said, I had a place where I could put a hot tub and a kayak. And I'm looking at this unit over in Castellon. And I paused a minute and I said, I did a little research real quick. And I said, is this on the lake? Yeah, you're shaking your head. Yeah. And she was like, no, but it's right nearby. And I'm like, close, but no cigar. Am I close, Mr. Merrick?
Well, if it's the particular unit I'm thinking of, it has a little courtyard behind it and then a little bit of a walk down to the cove. But that's not considered waterfront.
And why does that matter so much in a short-term rental? What's the deal? It's just, is it 30 feet from the house? Is it 300 feet from the house, but you're still on the lake?
I guess if you're good at marketing, you could you could have some pictures that are pretty creative. And I think I'd be more worried about my reviews afterward of people saying, yeah, the pictures made it look like I was right on the water.
Mm-hmm.
And, we had to get the hiking cane out to make it to the water. So not really the waterfront that you represented in the listing.
Yeah, we actually, and for those that do or don't know the village, I'll recap just a thing real quick. Rick and I both are on Lake DeSoto. How many acres? 210?
200 acres.
200 acres and beautiful. It really is. And one of the reasons I think it's so beautiful, if you can see behind me at all the trees are grown in. I mean, it's 50 years old and there's mature trees everywhere. It's just gorgeous. It's Eden-like, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, absolutely. It's gorgeous.
Well, and on the west end here, where we're on the west end of the lake, you're looking at the east end behind me. Rick is on the west end. There's roads that surround. There's Calella and there's DeSoto that kind of border the lake. There's a little bit of light industry. There's some restaurants and some shops and gas stations and whatever around there. Across the street from DeSoto, you would say easily a block away. That's a very generous description. Probably more like a half mile to 3 blocks away. There's a lady who's marketing a lake rental in Valencia Courts, where it's not just a hike. You would probably get in the car and drive to go to the lake. And it's not even going to be your lake. You'll have to go to, but she has pictures of the beautiful little bench by the lake and all that. And yeah, that.
Right. You're going to have a challenge becoming a super host doing that, I think, right?
Probably so.
Yeah.
So what has happened with lakefront properties? And we're going to talk about the lakefront properties in the village, but what has, and I'm not going to, well, I will, what has exploded on lakefront properties in the last post-pandemic couple of years?
Yeah, well, we've seen the lot prices go up. That's been the most significant thing. You've got the interior lots, the golf course lots, the waterfront lots. The supply and demand affects the lower supply the most, right? So there's only so many lake lots, and that has really pushed those prices up. So you can still get, I have 2 listings right now, quarter acre, kind of steep down to Lake Coronado $55,000. I mean, you can still get a nice waterfront lot in that price range. But they're
but are you going to have 50 to 60 steps down to the lake?
32 feet down to the lake from the walkout.
64 steps ish. Yeah.
Yeah, ish. So yeah, I mean, to get low bank waterfront on the main body of the lake, it's pretty hard to find. I mean, they just don't. Not many of them exist, and the ones that would are going to be up over 100,000 now. So there was a nice little Coronado Dam lot that sold for 85,000 not too long ago. So, and that had a low bank, but those lots just they really aren't out there.
Well, let's talk about this. And this had always confused me. Now, I'm certainly in no way a real estate professional. I don't even play one on TV, nor did I stay at a Holiday Inn Express. None of that. But I've always made note that when I see house lake prices just skyrocket, is that a fair word? I mean,
Sure.
they've just kind of exploded.
Absolutely.
Is it because the house has gotten so much more valuable, or is it the land?
No, and I try to give examples of this to try to explain it in an easier fashion. I had a little cracker box rental property in Seattle that I paid $139,000 for, $100 a square foot when I bought it 20 years ago. And today that house sells for $400 a square foot. It is not a fancy house. It does not have a garage. It just is just a nothing little house outside of Seattle. But the prices have gone up to where that house today would sell for $400 a square foot. Does it cost $400 a square foot to build that house? No. So what went up in value? Well, the ground that it's sitting on is what went up in value. And that's what translates to our increase in prices here. So if you can keep that in mind as you think about what's going on here in the village, the lot prices are going up. The supply and demand is driving up the demand to be in those locations, and the house really hasn't gone up. Yes, we've had the spike in lumber prices that doubled and then got cut back in half, fortunately, so those are back down. But other than an anomaly like that it's not the value of the house that's going up, it's the value of the land.
And I just have to let that sink in. I really do. And I'm a guy who owns several lake houses, and I'm trying to adjust my head and go, okay, well, for example, the home we're sitting in, you can look it up on the tax records. They appraised this lake lot at $60,000. Okay. Well, they appraised this lake lot at $60,000 15 years ago. Right. Well, it may move to 80, it may move to something like that, but the price of the house the value of the house has nearly doubled in that time frame. So I say I'm talking about the assessor, which, is another moving target, if you know what I mean. So let's go back to the question I initially asked, and the point I brought up, and that was the lady who was asking about investing and making an STR in the village at this time. Is this the right time? Is this a good idea? How does this relate? I mean, what would you do?
Well, again, with an investment, supply and demand drives everything. And I'll tell you, the number of Airbnb buyers over the last 6 months has just been astonishing.
You're talking about in the village. In the village.
I mean, 80% of my listings have been sold to cash buyers from out of state looking to Airbnb. Now, I do a lot on the water, so that is extra desirable for an Airbnb. So that's going to skew it a little bit. But those buyers are, in 2006, everyone was watching HGTV and they were buying homes to flip, if you remember.
Yep.
I mean,
and junk homes.
Fixer upper was the word. I mean, if you put the word fixer upper in the comments of a listing, it was sold.
Really?
I mean, that was a good thing to be listing a fixer upper, because it was gone. That's kind of where we've been the last 24 months or so, is anything that can be Airbnb. If you can put that it has a bedroom in the basement with a possible efficiency walkout, I mean, people like the idea of being able to generate extra revenue, and why wouldn't they? I mean, it's a great opportunity. That said, there's a whole lot of people that have come in with intentions of doing that, and eventually you've got a larger supply. So that's gonna The demand is still there. The bookings are strong here in the village, especially seasonally, like right now, and you could attest to that.
Mhm.
But the number of buyers coming in, I gotta think that that's going to slow down here eventually, along with the all the cash and all the out of state buyers that are bringing their cash in and investing it right now. Things are cyclical. Things do go up and down, and I think we've probably seen the peak of some of that.
Let me ask this because I wanted to know how this is related because, we have people that say we have to have millions of units built. And I understand that. And I also heard other people that say, well, if we weren't turning them into short-term rentals, we wouldn't need so many million units. Is
Right.
that right? I mean, is that part of the deal?
Multiple issues here. Well, number one, we have seen a shift. There's over 1 million standing units right now unsold in the United States. So
Really?
that has shifted, particularly some markets that were screaming hot. That soon as the Fed raised the interest rates, it slammed the brakes on in some of these markets, and the builders kept building, and they now have standing inventory and are seeing price reductions. So
Really?
that's shifting. There's also the eviction moratorium has run out. It
Oh,
is possible to evict folks now, and there's 700,000 that are in the eviction category that could be, and all of these factors, whether it's evictions, foreclosures, standing inventory with new construction, all of those dynamics, along with the interest rates, are going to determine where we go forward, and will we see a recession? So there's more than one factor. It isn't just as simple as, hey, we're short on inventory. No, there's other factors that are going to come into play over the next year or two that are going to determine how hard we get hit, if we get hit. I'm not worried about Hot Springs Village. I'm really not. I wouldn't want to be living in Austin, Texas, and some of those markets, though.
so let me get this straight. Had you recently purchased your old rental for $400 a foot, you would be nervous. Is that correct?
I would be scared to death. Yeah, $600,000 for the house. It's ridiculous.
And
So
it's I mean, I don't mean this wrong, but it's a track home.
it's a cracker box built in the 50s. Yeah, it's nothing.
It's a normal home. Well, and I see, like you talk about the HGTV and all the fixer upper shows. I see so many of those where they're trying to take literally cracker boxes or run of the mill track houses and make them not look like the track house 4 doors down. So it's the repeat thing. And I think that's one of the things that I love, and I think you do too, about lake living is that it's there's no two alike. There's nothing anywhere close to alike, which makes it so hard to try and describe what a property's worth and to try and describe the value. Rick,
Right.
you and I know this, and I'm going to remind of our guest here, even on this relatively flat lake, there is a hard side and there is a soft side. Every creek, every river, every pond, every lake has a hard side and a soft side. Lake Coronado, the south side of Lake Coronado is relatively flat and easy and just walk right into the lake. The north side, you're going to have stairs. There will be stairs. There will be stairs. I've got a little something I'm going to spring on you that we hadn't talked about, and this is tough. It really is, but I'm going to tell you why people do STRs. You want to hear it?
Yeah, let's hear it.
Jody, and I'm not going to use her last name. Jody, 6 people and a child. It was 70 degrees and warm on April the 28th when they left. And it was mixed weather, a little bit of clouds. And somebody wrote in a different language. This is and I can protect the name here real quick because it's high def, but yeah, this is a sheet that people leave a review when they check out. And yes, Diane and I are trying to build an income for retirement. That's what we do. We have Airbnbs for that purpose. But that's not the only purpose. The purpose is we sincerely love seeing families make great memories.
Mm-hmm.
Hold on to your drawers here. Somebody wrote, Nanny loves you always and forever, Jody. This trip was originally planned months ago as a hope to celebrate the completion of my sister Jody's chemo and radiation treatment from osteosarcoma. My sister was in remission for over 10 years of her life, And at 29, so she originally got it at 19. At 29 years old, the cancer returned again. Chemo and radiation proved to do very little. And shortly after her 30th birthday, she found out the cancer had spread and made the decision to stop treatment and to live her life as much as possible while she had the time left she had. This trip went from a celebration of a treatment completion to a celebration of what life she had left to live. This one got me, as if the rest hasn't.
Sure.
Jody, scratch, scratch, scratch. It says was, and it's scratched out. And it says is 6 years younger than me, but she's the light of my life. This is her sister writing this. She's beautiful, hardworking, loving, and kind. Easton, her godson, adores her with all he has in him. Life will never be the same without her when her time comes. I hope to see her live her life brightly, what's left of her life, boldly and joyfully, and fully knowing that she is deeply loved. I love you, Jody. And I can't say her name. My heart will miss you for all of the days once you leave and go to heaven. Keep a warm seat next to me for me. And I look forward to seeing you, hugging you in the light of day again. Now, I got this after this lady wrote us a review telling us how special this time was. She wasn't at the Hilton. She wasn't at the Holiday Inn. She wasn't at the Motel 6 looking at the parking lot out back. Is there something magical about the water? Seems to do it for me. Seems to be better. Where I'm going with this, and I apologize, but where I'm going with this is people can make memories in a natural environment, in a home environment, that they're not going to make anywhere else. And if this confuses you in some way, or if you still don't see the charm of an STR, you've probably not been to one, or you've not been to a great one. And anyway, I'd always wanted to share that with you, Rick. I didn't know if I ever had. And I pulled that out of the drawer when our cleaner brought that to us. And she had already let me know that it had gone from, we're going to have a celebration to we're celebrating what time we have left.
Enjoying the time. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's my STR story.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, it's an environment that is so relaxed. It is so unpressured. There's no agenda.
Yeah.
Right. You stay in a hotel and, you got maid service and you're in a city and you're coming, you're going. And it's just a different feel when you're in a home on the water. It is. It's very,
and for us here, it's a decompression zone, and we hear that all the time. Mm-hmm. So many of our reviews will talk about if you want a place to unplug and get away. And Diane and I have, we're always thinking of ways to improve. And she's like, well, what if we put an Xbox in? And I was like, under no conditions. Under no conditions. So we'll be in an estate sale and I look at a used Xbox and I'm like, well, that's cute. And I look over here and here's a game of Yahtzee and I'm like, yeah, I'll take the Yahtzee.
Right.
If I wanted to go somewhere different and be with my family and ignore them like I do at home, I could stay at home. Right. So
right.
Anyway, I digress, but thank you for that indulgence. We talked about not just an investment, but a lot of people, my neighbors across the street, actually have picked up a home as a second home. Now, how does that line up as investments, or is that just a cheaper way to do vacation, or what?
Well, second homes are obviously unique. You need to have the resources to do something like that. It's not necessarily the most efficient form of investment as far as a return on your investment. You're really counting on appreciation as being, I mean, you don't have a renter in there, so there's no one paying down the principal for you.
Yeah.
You don't really have the tax benefits other than a loss and the depreciation on the property. But if you're truly thinking of a second home from an investment standpoint, I would take probably a second look at that and decide either to be in an area where with rapid appreciation or looking at something where I can have some rental revenue, whether it's long-term or short-term. But a second home by itself is more, I don't want to say primarily, but yeah, probably primarily is for the use of the family when you have the means to have a second one. But from an
Well,
investment
yeah.
standpoint, unless you're in a really rapidly appreciating market, you're better off, dollars wise, to having a renter in there.
Well, it's better than a timeshare, right?
Everything's better than a timeshare. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, no, where I was going with that is that and people, I don't think people truly understand that aren't engaged with STRs, haven't been to one or haven't had one. That partial rental income offsets that. Maybe their goal across the street is not to, make a living income, but just to offset the expenses so that they can afford to, we're paying the note. That's as good as we want, that kind of thing. Do you see that?
Yeah, and that's true whether it's short term or long term. As an investor, when I was in Seattle, I didn't really care about positive cash flow. That wasn't as important because we had rapid appreciation. I knew that if I sat on it for 5 to 10 years, the property was going to double in value. So with that kind of appreciation, I wasn't as concerned. Here in the village, other than the last 2 years,
Yeah.
we just, and I'll stop right there and say, we've got townhomes here that were at the lowest end, would be Madrid courts.
Mm-hmm.
We had,
or DeSoto courts.
I'm sorry, DeSoto courts, thinking of the association. DeSoto courts, 2 years ago, those 2-bedroom, 1-bath units were in the mid 50s. Today they're in the mid 90s.
Mm-hmm.
So you had a 30% return a year to 2 years ago, and 30% in the last 12 months again. That's a huge appreciation. That's all you need. But you can't count on that necessarily appreciation wise here in the village, in my opinion. It's more important to have that cash flow revenue to make it a good investment. That said, it's still difficult to have, returns. You're not going to have a 10% cap rate, a 10% return on your money every year. That's not a reasonable expectation either. Values have gone up enough that's kind of compensated. So you may have a more 5% cap rate is more typical for this area.
When the stock market goes down, they will say that there was a rush to safety. We went to the big blue chips, we went to the whatever. I think part of the acceleration of the village has been the rush to safety. And we don't even talk about this enough. We really don't. And I use this number, and you had asked me about this number once before. The crime in the village is 13.6% of the national crime rate. Outside that gate, it's 88%. Outside this gate, it's 86%. In here, it's 13.6, which is 1/6 of the national crime rate. Do we have it? Absolutely. We have crime. Do we have it like they do outside? No. Not we don't have as much of it by any stretch. And where I'm going with all that is we just kind of, that's a fact. That's a piece of the multiplication table that we just aren't putting in so many times. Yes, there's a lake. Yes, it's beautiful. Yes, it's affordable. Yes, it's inexpensive. Yes, it's appreciating. Yes, you can get a good bargain. And no, your stuff's not going to be robbed every 3 weeks. And you're not going to be beaten the head and taken or shot, or you don't hear shootings, you don't whatever. All that to say, let's go back to just a little bit more. And I know we had started out this show that I took away from the point, but we'd started out this show talking about the 11 lakes, and let's just talk about lakefront property. And 2 things, Cooper built 2 things that 3, they built the infrastructure and streets. They built the golf courses, and they built the lakes. Well, you build golf courses so you can build homes around golf courses. Well, you build lakes so that you can
build homes around the lakes.
Right.
Yeah. So we have seen pretty dramatic increase in lot sales throughout the village, not just lakes, golf courses, but even the interior lots are doing much better than they have historically. We still have obviously an abundance of lots. The POA purchased back from the Commissioner of State Lands another 2,100 lots last year. They're doing the right things, and we're trying to get some of that inventory sold off. To give you an idea, because the lot values get pushed up, supply and demand from where we have.
Well, and I meant to ask you, is this a rising tide lifts all ships kind of thing?
Exactly right.
Okay.
Exactly
Okay.
right. So interior lots that typically in the past have been sold as almost amenity lots, right? I mean,
Golf lots. Yeah.
yeah, $43 a month for the monthly dues. Not likely a lot that somebody's going to build on anytime soon, but you get the discount for golf. The other lots a little bit nicer, 2,000 to 5,000 for an interior lot. On the east side, maybe a little bit more desirable. You get up into the 5,000 to 7,000. You get on the golf course for 15,000. You get on waterfront in the 50,000 range as a start. Not the best quality, but the low end. But look at the numbers. You would think that maybe with COVID and that type of a thing, maybe we would have had a slowdown, but it was quite the opposite. Check out the lot sales in the village going back to 2017, where we only had 91 lots that sold in 2017. 2018 was 120. 2019, not much better, or actually went back. 2020 finally got over 200 lots. 2021 all-time 316, and then we're on track to do that again year to date with 153. So good lot sales numbers. And so that rising tide lifts all boats. That really is a possibility, that as the land values increase, the interior lots get bought, the golf courses, the waterfront. We already have a shortage of building lots with waterfront, and to get on the lot will continue to be more and more supply and demand driven. There was a lake outside of Seattle, Lake Sawyer, was considered Timbuktu. Sound familiar? Nice lake, but in 1993, there wasn't a house on that lake that was worth $300,000. No way you could, would spend $300,000 to live on Lake Sawyer. Today, there's not a home under $1 million on that lake.
Same homes, roughly, or many of them the same homes.
Many of them, they're the original homes that were built. Yes. So, and again, it's not that those $1 million homes for a 3,000 square foot. It's not the cost of the house. The land value went up to buy waterfront. The demand to be on the water continued to increase and drove the prices up. So the waterfront that we're seeing, I mean, we're up to 48% on waterfront cash buyers on our waterfront this year to date.
This year.
That's a huge number, more than double the national average. So we're getting folks from Texas and California and Illinois, all those states that, are wanting to move into the village. But what lifestyle do you want once you're in the village? Yeah, there's some great interior lots where if you want privacy, you can get privacy. If you want to be on the golf course, beautiful. Randy talks about that there's an Airbnb he likes that's, tranquil and on the golf course.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. There's never really anything quite like being on the water, though. I mean, you can, whether you Airbnb it or not, the demand is just going to be highest for waterfront. Always will be.
Well, let's go back to the lots here real quick. Now, how does the POA figure into this? Now, they do have their own lot sales program.
They do. I have a list of over 700 lots that, they've given out to the realtors. The realtor community has those available to sell too. This does not include those numbers.
So if they've sold a lot, it's not on that sheet you just showed.
It's not on here. This was in out of the MLS. This was listed lots, over 300 last year, and we're on track for that again this year. So good numbers. That's what we want to see. We want to see those get purchased. We want folks paying their POA dues on those lots. That helps, everyone, gets our roads fixed and keeps our dues low.
Yeah, and our culverts fixed. Well, I'll tell you what, let's take a swing by real quick, because I do see the dark clouds coming on your end, by the way. You can't, you're going to have to look back over your house to see them, but they'll be there. They'll be there. But no, what I was going to say, let's start on the west end. We have Lake Segovia, which is 12 acres.
Yeah, very small.
Surrounded by townhouses, mostly.
mostly. There's one 7-acre parcel there that I have listed for 135,000. That's a unique piece of property.
I
But
know that guy. I know that
yeah,
guy. I
I'll
know
bet
the
you
guy.
do.
Yeah.
Yeah, your wife sleeps with him.
Yeah, she does.
So
Well, when
yeah,
she, yeah.
yeah. Segovia, yeah, that's at the far west end. Then we dump into Lake DeSoto. Lake DeSoto dumps into Lake Cortez. Cortez dumps over the cliff and back down to the middle fork of the Saline River.
Well, let me interrupt you for one second.
Yeah,
Segovia doesn't have any watercraft, or it has no powered craft.
correct.
So they could have paddle boats, they could have kayaks, they could have things like that, paddle boards, but no water. I mean, no motorized activity, right?
That's right. We really have 4 full recreational lakes, and that's DeSoto, Cortez, Coronado, and Balboa. Those
Okay.
4. 2 of those have a marina. Yeah,
And DeSoto is the smallest with 200.
right.
Cortez doesn't have a marina, and it's how many? How many? 186, something like that.
240 acres.
240.
It's
240.
bigger.
And
Yep.
good point. I wanted to make note. The water literally comes in through Cedar Creek, feeds Lake Segovia. Lake Segovia overflows and goes through the golf course into Lake DeSoto, which
Right.
we're sitting on now, and is pretty relatively deep for a village lake. And it goes out of here and down into Lake Cortez, which is even deeper, as I would read it. What would you say about Lake Cortez?
Uh, it's probably my favorite lake, even though I live on DeSoto. It even is a little bit more of a bowl in how it comes down. It has it's not an oblong oval. It has kind of a little takeoff to it. So it's it's a beautiful area. It's steep on, again, like you described, you got very steep on the north side. Other areas like Ruby Circle, where it's quite a bit shallower, and you've got the low bank waterfront. But Cortez is just a beautiful lake. I mean, it's a favorite of mine. And Coronado goes up 150 acres larger. You go up to 380, 390 acres on Coronado. And then, of course, Balboa is over 944 acres.
Well, let's go back to Coronado just for a second and talk about issues. We have Lake Panada, which is fed outside from the big pond outside of the Contemporary Christian Ranch, which is also the youth camp. But basically, it's an overflow from that pond into Lake Panada, and Lake Panada, occasionally referred to as the Snake Lake, because it can have occasional reptiles on it, and they're not poisonous, all of them, just some of them.
We'll be fair. There are snakes in all of the lakes.
That would be true. That would be true. There's not a lake here, and whether you like it or not, that's a sign of a healthy lake.
That's right.
Yeah, because the snakes have to have something to eat. If there's not little fish and there's not minnows and there's not frogs, then you're not going to have snakes, and you have a sterile lake. So yeah, right. It's a trade-off. But all that said, Lake Panada, which is it is a great fishing lake, I'll give you that. But it's kind of V-shaped and has a lot of deep coves in it. How big is it? 100 and what?
No, it's not that. I don't.
85 or something, isn't it?
That big, yeah. It's got deep coves this direction, but they're not. I mean, they're fairly shallow. So I mean, yeah. And as you said, that dumps over then into Coronado, and Coronado into Balboa. But
and that spillway at the back of
two stream systems that go from west to east, one
north and south, kind of.
Yeah, correct.
Well, but the thing I was talking about, Lake Panada, when we've had a big rain, the Lake Panada waterfall is amazing.
Gorgeous,
it is, and there's huge boulders the size of this house with rocks just pouring over it, water pouring over it. It goes into the stream that actually goes right by the RV park that feeds all of Lake Coronado. Now, let's not brush past this. Lake Coronado has a boat dock per se, but it doesn't have a marina. So if you want to fill up your boat, you got to tug some gas from end to end, unless you have an electric boat, which is pretty popular on Lake Coronado. But what I was going to say, also talk about the fitness center and the helipad there.
Yeah, right on the lake. I mean, a gorgeous backdrop to the fitness center, and you've got the tennis courts, you've got the indoor pool, just a beautiful amenities to be right on the edge of the water. And while they don't have a marina, they do have the boat slips that are rentable. I think they're pretty full, if not absolutely full. but you're right. You'd be lugging gas if you live on Coronado.
There's just a downside of it. It is a gorgeous lake. It is
Yeah.
simply gorgeous. Probably one of the prime spots there. And just to give people an idea, at the far west end, where the natatorium, the workout center, the indoor pool, the sauna, the steam room, the hot tub, the tennis courts, the Coronado Center where we have concerts, the library, the bowling, lawn bowling, all that is just a few steps away from dozens of condos right on that end, or townhouses right on that end. Now, the rest of the lake pretty much is all homes, freestanding homes. But
Right.
tell me about the townhouses on the just north of that west end.
Yeah, I just sold 8 Opalo.
Spell that, would you? Spell that.
Like Opal, OPAL,
Okay.
with an O on the end. So Opalo, um, a 3-bedroom unit, 2 bath, for 275. That was a kind of broke new ground in that area. But the 3-bedroom units have gone up from, depending on which lake and what amenities and whether they've been remodeled. Those townhomes have cracked 300,000 in some cases here in the village now. So the 2 bedrooms, you can't even get on. You can't buy a 2 bedroom on the water under 200 anymore.
And I'm chuckling because I know people outside of the Hot Springs Village area are going, what?
Yeah, yeah.
Let's talk. And I don't usually want to go into this, but you and I have, and you're marketing for us a 21-acre parcel on the far west or east end of that, I guess. But at that said, that 21 acres, we had an engineer come in, wanted to review, or engineer, an architect, wanted to review the property, wanted to look that it's for sale. And one of the things that he said was that the connection fees were
Right.
not expensive at all in his mind. So address
Yeah.
that.
Well, he was talking about just the water connection in Colorado, where he came from, was a $33,000 cost to him to put that together for his in his subdivision for his 2-acre parcel.
Not
So
sewer, just water.
right. And so he was asking about the utility access and the costs and the fees. And when I described to him that, yes, you're entitled to POA water, the electricity is right here at the street, the grinder system for sewer, all of that together, you can typically, you're not going to spend $20,000 on all of it: permits, fees, grinder, connection, water connection, electric connection, all of that. You aren't going to spend 20,000 here in the village. And he was just shocked.
Well, what did he say his came to? He had talked to the POA about this, and I guess where I'm going is for the person who's not here but's listening in, what would it cost if I had just a raw piece of ground and I wanted to start building? What are my startup costs to just break ground and start getting going? What did that come to roughly?
Well, we did just have an increase. So I got to kind of preface this with the fact that the grinder system, the board just decided that rather than being responsible for the grinder systems in perpetuity and it being an expense to the POA, that they're going to now permit those, allow the builders to install them, and then the homeowner will now be responsible for those grinder systems rather than the POA. So it was a practical change that they had to make, but that is going to be a little bit of a change in the costs as well. So typically, we've been for as little as $12,000 for total costs to build, out the door, but it's going to be higher than that with the modifications to the grinder situation.
With the grinder pumps coming in, and let's talk real quick as we're going through the village. We're about to get to Balboa, but the Balboa Lake. But why do we have grinder systems and pumps? What does that do? Why don't we just let the sewage run down the road like it always does to the lower point?
Well, and some of us do, not very many of us in the village, but those here on Lake DeSoto, we have a gravity system. We do not have grinders here. So the very first phase of the village was the traditional gravity, but we do have a pump down on Kalea, and that it is there. But the rest is gravity. The rest of the village went to the grinder system, and it's been actually pretty amazing to look back, just as so many things that Cooper did, how much forethought he had, thinking of 60,000 people living in the village, not the 14 or 15,000 that we have today. And that's actually caused a little bit of a situation. I know flow wise, there's one area on the east side of the village that I had explained to me that the gray water doesn't move fast enough in the pipe because we don't have enough volume through that pipe, that part of the village. And again, they built the infrastructure, those pipes to accommodate full developed village, and we're just not there yet. So they're actually having to look at doing a few things to keep that moving. But amazing that Cooper didn't cut costs and allow things to have to be improved in huge, expensive ways. He really built it with the same thing on our water supply and other issues, where just had a lot of foresight.
Well, there was nothing except the good moral character of the man from keeping him from not building the system to the present needs or 50% over the present needs and go, right. Hey, because after he got through with the property, and to explain how this works, when they built this lake in 1971 and 72, they bulldozed all this down in here. They cut all the trees out. They sold it back to Weyerhaeuser, who they bought the lumber from the first time. They filled the water up. They got the lake going, and they turned the deed over to the POA and went, here's your lake now. And you get to maintain and sustain this lake. Well, guess what? They could have done the same thing with the sewer systems and the water systems and whatever. They could have underbuilt it and just said, it's your job to upgrade it now. But as we move on, one of my favorite areas, just FYI, is the backside of Lake Coronado. It is gorgeous. There's a spillway there that nobody knows how to get to typically. You walk down to it, and there's this stream, creek, whatever, that's maybe 15, 20 feet wide with big rocks and water just pouring over it. And when you walk down there, you're right behind the cemetery, and you walk another few feet down and you're behind the beehive hangout. Right. On the other side of that is the Cedar Creek's walking trail that'll take you several miles down to, what is that? I keep getting, is it Mail Route Road? I keep getting the road backwards, but it's the road that is the barrier between the Coronado runoff and where Lake Balboa begins. And I'm trying to think, it's either Mail Route or anyway, Danville, I think it is. But anyway, where Lake Balboa begins, how big is Lake Balboa?
944 acres. So it's really significantly bigger, more than twice as big as Coronado, the second. So it's the big lake. So, where we have 150, 160 people living on Lake DeSoto, there's another 165 homes on Cortez, 215 people living on Coronado. There must be at least 500 homes on Balboa.
No, you're saying people, but you mean homes too.
I meant homes.
Yeah, yes, sure. So there's say the homes again. How many? 180 on
155 or so, 165, 215, and then there's
500 plus.
There's close to 500. Yeah.
Now, if you notice if you've been to the village, if you haven't, I'll explain. But if you have, you'll notice when you come in the east end, it's relatively flat. There's a few hills. As you come to the west end, you're rising in altitude the whole time. You will come up at least 350 feet from the east gate to where you and I are sitting right now, and then maybe a few more by the time you get out to the top of the hill, as we would call it, the west gate. But that said, it's such a gradual change. You don't think much about it. But the lakes on the mid to eastern side, but from Magellan and Balboa on, they're much smaller properties. They're 8, 10, 11, that kind of thing, right?
Talking about lot sizes?
No, lake sizes. Lake sizes.
Oh, lake sizes.
Lake Sophia, Lake Maria, Lake Estrella, yes. Lake Isabella.
Oh, significantly less, down to 11 acres. They're very small, but that's just a really different feel here in the village. It's more of a manicured, very homogeneous. The homes are newer. There's a lot more brick.
They were all built around the same time.
Yeah, there's more of an elegance to definitely the golf club feel on that side of the village and in that area. Lake Granada in that area is very desirable. Beautiful golf course. That the the real money, a lot of the real money is being dropped there with builders that are building some fabulous brand new homes
Yeah, yeah.
on some lots on the golf courses
As
there.
opposed to the fake money they're using on this end. I understand. I
Yeah.
got it, Rick. I got it. I got it.
Don't give the secret away. We kind of like it here on the west side. So
Well, let me mention also, and for those of you that haven't visited or don't know or whatever, if you come in on the west side of the gate, the west side of the village, which when you come in from Hot Springs, it's the closest on Highway 7, you'll travel about 9 to 11 miles and you'll come to Balboa Road. And Balboa Road is at the westernmost point of Lake Balboa. And it's right there by the woodlands. That is where the original village stopped. When Cooper bought their original 14,000 acres, that's where it ended. Right there was at Balboa Road. And that line of delineation was 1990. So anything built beyond that point cannot be more than 1990 because it didn't exist. It was just timberland. But what happened is on the far, far, far east end, where you talk about the manicured and the lots and the whatever, and you're exactly correct. But on that far east end, they had clear cut that. They didn't know if Cooper was going to make it. They didn't know if Hot Springs Village was going to make it. So they clear cut that and reseeded it with little pine saplings. So here on our end, we have wild mixtures of cedar, oak, elm, gum, pine, everything. Is that thunder?
no, I'm just pointing at
at the trees behind you. Yeah.
At the giant white oaks, one of which just fell across the cove here about 2 weeks ago, and the POA was right out there to cut it up and haul it away. But yeah, we've got some huge trees on this side.
Yeah. Whereas on that end, typically it's a lot of pine plantation pines. And don't get me wrong, it's attractive, it's pretty. It will grow into this eventually because that's how Arkansas is. It's green and lush and it will grow. But if you took pictures from the golf courses, you wouldn't think it was even the same place. Of course, right. It is about 17 miles apart too. So there's that, right?
Right.
Have we missed anything else about the lakes, Rick?
The dine-arounds.
Oh, yeah. What is that? Well, and every lake has a little bit different, it sounds like. So what is that?
Yeah, Lake Coronado that you had mentioned the other day was having a kind of a sunset cruise. But here on Lake DeSoto, after we moved here, kept hearing the different people talk about, boy, it was really neat when we had the dine-arounds. I said, what in the world is a dine-around? I literally didn't know what they were talking about. And until I went and did a market analysis for a lady that was lived here on the lake that used to head it up, and Marty Mathers, she shared, and she said, well, yeah, we used to go from dock to dock and we'd share food and we'd tie our pontoon boats in the middle of the lake, and we'd have a little party and get together. And I said, you did this once a year, like for 4th of July? She said, no, we did it every month. And I said,
which you said, I could do this.
I said, this sounds great. I said, why don't you do it anymore? And she, well, it was a lot of work organizing, and some of the people moved away and it just kind of fell by the wayside. And I said, well, I'll sponsor it right here, right now. Let's do it. And so my wife agreed to help out with that, do the emailing and connecting with folks. And we hosted our dock, and we had the very first time tried to get the word out. And I started a website called lakedesoto.com so that people could go on there and see when the dates were of the dine-arounds. And it's the last Tuesday of every month. So people will choose to host a dock, and they'll have the first night we had, the first month that we did it, we had jambalaya was at one of the docks, and then somebody had pulled pork at the next one, and then everybody came to our back deck right back here for dessert afterwards. And it's just been a lot of fun. It's growing, and the word's getting out that we're doing it again. But what a neat way to meet your neighbor. And even if you don't have a boat or you don't have a dock, it doesn't matter. If you live on the lake and you want to get to know your neighbors, you can participate.
As I understand it, August 31st, it's going to be right out here.
20, nope, not the 30th.
30 for 28th, 29th, the last Tuesday of the month.
Last Tuesday of the month, Dennis. Last Tuesday.
Yes. Coronado also has a cruise around, which I thought was interesting. But now Balboa has its own yacht club, which it's okay, but it's fun. Well, they're great fun. Yeah, that's the east side. Well, that I'd like to call them mid-village.
Okay.
So they don't get a big head. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Well, I don't know. Is there anything else we've missed?
I think that's it.
Well, recovering our lake show here, doing a wrap up here. We've covered the lakes of Hot Springs Village and the beautiful area around it. We actually covered a little bit of the weather and a lot of the investing. And I tell you what, next time, Rick, you'll come back and join us.
Absolutely. Anytime, Jim.
We'd love to have
anytime.
you. For Hot Springs Village Inside Out, I'm Dennis Simpson. We will see you next time.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Hot Springs Village Inside Out, a podcast where Hot Springs Village, Arkansas is the star. Please subscribe to the podcast. You can do that by visiting our website, hsvinsideout.com, and tell a friend.